Year 7, welcome back. Now, we've seen some excellent work from you over the last couple of weeks, and I'm really impressed with how much knowledge of Macbeth there is. Some of you know the play, some of you are forecasting accurately, some of you watched the play, at least one of you did, broadcast by the Globe on YouTube during quarantine. Thanks for that, I enjoyed it as well. But every time you watch one of these Shakespeare plays, you may find you notice something different. I certainly do. I think I watched Hamlet about 10 times. The more you read them, the more you watch them, the deeper your understanding becomes. So it actually becomes less boring rather than more boring the more you study this. So if you've read Macbeth already, please don't think that your work's done, because the work isn't done, the fun isn't done. So let's cast our mind back to the start of this play. Pathetic fantasy. What does pathetic fantasy mean? Quite difficult to work it out from the words pathetic fantasy, but there it is. And it clues in the question, what weather does Shakespeare link to witches at the beginning of the play? If you've forgotten what the weather was like, then Google Macbeth text and there's a little stage direction. In today's lesson, we're going to look at the idea of tyranny, or the nature of the tyrant. Tyrant is a ruler who seizes power illegally and who governs without restrictions. And you'd have heard of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which means king lizard. Latin tyrannus means lord and master. Saurus is lizard, Rex is king, so Tyrannosaurus means the lord lizard. Bearing that in mind, in what way is Macbeth proved he is a tyrant? So did he take the crown illegally? Is he governing without restrictions? There'll be a little more evidence of the latter today. But what are the advantages of having a tyrant for a ruler? It's 2020, we're living through this quarantine situation. Some argue that the government has been somewhat tyrannical in that it's told us what to do. It hasn't been any restrictions to the power that they've had over us. But what are the advantages of that? Look at the quarantine, look at how effective it's been. Are there advantages of having a tyrant for a ruler? Today, we're going to look at a small section of Act 3, Scene 1. We're halfway through the play. We're going to read and understand sections. We're going to look at the relationship between Macbeth and Banquo and analyze or evaluate Macbeth's state of mind. At this stage, I think it's a good idea if I gave you the questions I need to ask of you. So, what's Macbeth worried about? Which words or phrases show his state of mind? And what is he going to do to solve the problem? Try not to limit yourself to one concern he has, particularly if you're in the higher sets. So there's more than one thing he's concerned about, but we'd like to see at least one. To access the lesson, you need to know that Macbeth says to be thus is not to be safely thus. Thus means to be in this way, so in this situation. He exhibits a lot of jealousy or envy of Banquo, his friend, because Banquo has a lot of virtuous qualities. He's dauntless, he's fearless, he has valor, he's courageous, he's a good leader. Valor means courage. And also Banquo rebuked the witches. He criticized them. He expressed sharp disapproval of them. Macbeth is saying that Banquo would actually be quite a worthy leader. So Banquo scolded the witches because a man like Banquo, a noble character like him, doesn't hold with witchcraft. He doesn't, unlike Macbeth, place faith in the ungodly. The witches know the will of God, they're prophets, Macbeth says that he holds a scepter, but it is barren, which means the rod-like symbol of monarchy, basically a gold pole with a crown on the end, has no value to him because he can't hand it on to anybody else. It's unfertile, if you like. It's a metaphor of a plant that can't reproduce. And Macbeth complains that the scepter is going to be wrenched away from him. That's to say, pulled violently away by an unlineal hand, which means someone who isn't going to allow the crown to produce, to continue in a line down Macbeth's family. Rancour means hate. So let's jump across to the text and just read it together closely. Bear with me while I try and select the right screen. It's been a while since we've done this, so it's... Yes, okay. So, as I say, you only have one page to analyze, but it's Macbeth giving a soliloquy just as Banquo sets off for his horse ride, for a nighttime ride with his son. So Macbeth says, to be thus is nothing. So here I am as king, but it means nothing unless I'm safe. Our fears in Banquo stick deep. Banquo has royalty of nature, which means he's a natural king. He dares to do a lot. He's brave. He has dauntless temper of mind, which means he's calm under pressure. Temper, he has self-control. He's wise. He acts in safety. He has good kingly judgment. So, therefore, the witches could be correct. Perhaps Banquo will take over the crown from me and hand the throne to his son. Perhaps my crown is at risk, thinks Macbeth. There is none but he whose being I do fear. So Macbeth turns his attention, now that he's assassinated Duncan, to Banquo. He says, this is actually quite a strange metaphor, but Shakespeare loads a lot more meaning than he needs to, perhaps, but who might criticize him? He says, my genius, my thoughts are rebuked, criticized, as it is said Mark Antony's was by Caesar. So Macbeth is saying that my judgment is not quite right. My judgment's being punished like Caesar did to Mark Antony. Mark Antony was Caesar's general in Egypt, and he fell in love with Cleopatra, who was the queen of Egypt. So it interfered with politics, and so Caesar, who was the ruler of Rome, told off his general for not governing Egypt in a sensible way. So Banquo chid the sisters because Banquo doesn't like to involve himself in witchcraft. When they first put the name, when the witches first told us the prophecy. And the next thing that Macbeth is upset about, this is where he talks about having a barren scepter, and the scepter will be wrenched from my hands, wrenched from me by an unlineal hand. No son of mine succeeds, but Banquo's sons will succeed. Now Macbeth complains that the assassination's been in Banquo's favour. Duncan, full of grace, gracious Duncan, has been killed by me. I've filed my mind, or I've disgraced myself by killing the king. Not for my family, but for Banquo's family. Only for them. To make his sons kings have I done that. So, a lot of frustration from Macbeth. I hope you've gathered what he is concerned about, a few things there, and while I'm here, I have summarized a small amount of that scene little video. I need to jump out of this program and jump back in, I think, for it to work. So bear with me for a second. Let's switch the sound on. Let's go back into this. And I will see you on the other side of this video.
Students, welcome to the Heath. Last time we met, there was pandemonium at Inverness Castle. The king was discovered dead. The king's sons escaped to England and Ireland, and Macduff and Macbeth and Banquo promised to meet and find out more about who could have been involved in the murder. Macbeth executed the two guards, we believe, to eliminate any witnesses that he himself carried out the murder. So let's catch up on events so far. The king is dead. Long live the king. Macbeth now wears the crown. Let's put him down safely, because he has a starring role. Macbeth's friend Banquo is about to go for a ride on a horse. I hope you can see behind me. Banquo is also going to be taking his son, Fleance. Now, Macbeth is particularly interested in this ride. He asked Banquo whether he's going at night, whether he's taking his son with him. What do we remember about what the witches told Macbeth about Banquo, his son, and his son's sons? Yes, they're going to inherit the crown. So Macbeth will wear the crown for a time, but he won't be able to pass it. He refers to it as a barren scepter or a fruitless crown, because it won't be productive for Macbeth. It goes to Banquo and his sons, or Banquo's son. So in the scene you're about to watch, we'll place Banquo on the horse and follow Macbeth's thoughts and potential action as to how he's going to deal with Banquo.
To be thus is nothing but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which should be feared. There is none but he whose being I do fear. They hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren scepter in my gripe, there's to be wrenched with an unlineal hand.
Okay, let me jump back to the PowerPoint if I can. Apologies for the impromptu sound effects. One was baby crying, which I couldn't remove. The other peacock. Here we are. The questions again. What is Macbeth worried about? Try not to limit yourself to one thing if you're in one of the higher groups. What words or phrases show his state of mind? 3. What's he going to do to solve the problem? Jump over to the left. How would you use pathetic fallacy to stage an assassination scene if you had to? Remembering what pathetic fallacy was. So, a couple of things to do. More if you're in the high groups. Here's an example of what you could write. Macbeth is worried that his monarchy isn't safe. That's all. But if you want to stretch yourself, say that he's also worried about something else. Thirdly, there might be a third thing he's concerned about. A phrase that shows he's worried about the monarchy not being safe is right at the beginning, when he says to be thus is nothing but to be safely thus. Remember, Macbeth doesn't feel safe while Banquo and his child are alive. And that links to what he's going to do next. I think he's going to look at the last couple of lines of the text we will have sent you. See you on Wednesday.